Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon. We're from Tamarack Wildlife and Education, Rehabilitation and Education Center. We're located just a little bit north of Sagertown, about 2 or 3 miles north of Sagertown. We would also like to thank Armstrong and especially Northwest Rural Electric Co-op for supporting us and bringing us here for this program this weekend. We've thoroughly enjoyed it, and our birds have thoroughly enjoyed it. We have 2 distinct missions at Tamarack Wildlife Rehab and Education Center. First, our first primary mission is to rehabilitate injured wildlife, and we specialize in birds of prey. So birds like bald eagles, red-tailed hawks, great horned owls, and other species that are birds of prey are our specialty. But we also will take other birds, such as songbirds, seed-eating songbirds. We also will take turtles. And when we have the appropriate staff and time, we'll take baby possums too. But mainly we do birds of prey. And we are entirely privately funded through donations. We don't receive any sort of federal money or state money. So everything we do, we rely on people like you to support us to take care of our animals. So today we brought two different sort of birds. The bird here is a peregrine falcon. He's a male peregrine falcon, and his nickname is Pierre. The peregrines are not very common around here. And our other bird that we have today is actually a very, very common bird that lives in cities, parks, towns, and people's backyards. And this is an eastern screech owl. And we'll talk more about the eastern screech owl in a few minutes. Now, yes, our second mission, I forgot to mention, is that we do education programs. Like today, we come to these sort of events, but also we go into quite a few schools. We go to scouting organizations. We go to nursing homes and personal care homes. We've done church groups, and just about anywhere that people are interested in some sort of program about birds of prey and what we do at Tamarack, we will come do it. All these birds and all our people and staff were all very, very highly regulated by both the federal government and the state government. So everything we do, all the birds we have, all requires a whole lot of permits, and we try to do everything just right so we don't get in trouble with any of the regulatory agencies. So, but just be careful, because when you're out, just about all birds throughout the country are protected. There's the Migratory Bird Act of 1918, which is a federal law, protects all bird species except for a very few species that have been imported from Europe. So you can't harm any of the birds you see in the wild. Now, our first bird, the peregrine falcon, as I said, is a very, very unusual bird for around these parts. The peregrines had a difficult time in this part of the country. Back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, there was a widespread use of a pesticide known as DDT, which had a really profound impact on these birds and their life cycle. One of the problems with it, that chemical, it builds up in the environment and it accumulates in the food chain. So a bird like a peregrine that relies on feeding on other birds. The other birds that it fed upon have fed upon insects that have fed upon crops that may have been sprayed with DDT. So all the DDT kept accumulating, and it had some pretty bad effects on the peregrines, one of which was that it caused their eggshells to become very, very thin and break very easily. So when the peregrines would lay their eggs and they would try to incubate them by sitting on them like birds do, the eggs would break. And so before very long, there weren't many peregrine falcons east of the Mississippi. But there were some people who figured this out. Rachel Carson was one of them, who wrote a book called Silent Spring back in the early 1970s. And a lot of other concerned people and scientists got together, and they started finding peregrines from all around the world, because these birds do occur on every continent except Antarctica. And we were able to breed them in captivity, and then they were released, not necessarily into the wild everywhere, but one of the places that they were released into are cities. Because the peregrines, they naturally like to nest up on cliffs. They're cliff birds. They like to live on cliffs and nest on cliffs, raise their babies on cliffs. And we don't have a whole lot of cliffs in the wild around here in this part of the country, but we do have a whole lot of big tall buildings in cities like Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Harrisburg, Cleveland. And so the peregrines nest, the birds were released into cities where they could be kept close eye on them with video cameras, and there was a nice habitat for them, and there was plenty to eat, because one of the birds that they really like eating are pigeons. So a city would have a big supply of that. And up until this spring, we thought there were about 32 peregrine falcon nests in Pennsylvania. But lo and behold, this spring, we had someone bring us in a baby peregrine that fell out of a nest. And we examined the bird, and it was just fine. There was nothing wrong with it. And we found out from the person who brought it in where the nest was, and it was up in the Erie Bayfront in the shipbuilding facility. So it was taken back and reunited with its father, and it's done quite well. And so now we know that there are 33 nests in Pennsylvania at least, which is really exciting news. And it was kind of interesting because the people that worked at the shipyard didn't really know for sure what sort of bird they had. They knew it was kind of special. But one thing they noticed over the last few years that the number of pigeons that they had declined. So it was doing their job of keeping the pigeons down. But they would eat pigeons, and they would eat the gulls and other shorebirds. That's what they're famous for. Okay. Now, are you going to go? Okay. On the other end of the spectrum, we have a very unusual bird, and now we have a very, very common bird. This is the eastern screech owl, and it's full grown. This is as big as they get, and we're pretty sure that this is a boy. It's a male, and he's our newest education bird. He came in this spring. He was found up near Albion along a road. He had a head injury and an eye injury. We think he was probably hit by a car. And that's not unusual. We get a lot of birds in our center that have been hit by cars. Unfortunately, his eye was severely injured, and we had to have it surgically removed. And also the hearing in one of his ears has been impaired. So he cannot be released to the wild. All of the birds that we keep for education purposes are birds with this sort of a type of disability that they cannot be released back into the wild and hunt on their own. So even though our goal is to get them all back into the wild, sometimes that just doesn't work out. The eastern screech owls, as I said, are very common. They nest a lot of times in cavities or hollow tree limbs or branches in trees or inside of buildings. So a lot of people have them in their barns or even in nesting boxes that people put up for other bird species. If the hole's big enough, they'll sometimes move in and raise their babies in the nest in that area. They're probably just about all around you, and we don't often see them. A lot of times we hear them outside at night. They live in city parks and they live in backyards, just like I said before. Whoa, he's kind of rambunctious. Yes. Oh yes. Since he is our newest bird, in addition to our education birds, we've yet to find a name for him. So one of the things we're doing here today is we're taking suggestions for names for our new eastern screech owl. So if anyone has a suggestion of what would be an appropriate name for our new bird, we have a suggestion box at our table. Or if you like, you can go on the internet and find us on Facebook, and you can submit names there too. Okay, so far I guess I ought to stop and say, does anyone have any questions? I know I've been going pretty fast about either of these two birds. No, nothing? What do you think? Even though he only has one eye, what do you think? It's pretty big, isn't it? Yeah, owls have very, very large eyes. And why do you think it's important that they have large eyes? Yeah.
So they can see at night.
Yeah, most owls like to hunt at night, so they go out at night to hunt when it's dark. And with the big eyes, it helps them hunt at night. And they also, although we can't see their ears because they're covered with feathers, if we could, we would see that their ears, the openings of their ears are as big as their eyes, and maybe some even a little bigger. And that's so that they can hear really, really well at night. So it's very important for their hunting that they can see and hear at night. Okay. Excuse me?
Silent flyers.
Oh, yes. Also, owls are very, very quiet. They're very fluffy and their wings are soft, and that's so they can fly quietly at night and sneak up on their prey. And it's also because if they're listening, using their ears to hunt, and they're flying after a mouse that's moving, if their wings are making too much noise, they wouldn't be able to find it as easily. So they fly very quietly, and they also hide. They are great camouflage. They can hide up against a tree or in a tree branch or in a little hollow spot in a tree, and you may never see them unless you look really, really hard. Okay. Do we want to bring out another bird or not? We're done? Oh. Okay, well, I guess it'll be a quick program. But really, does anybody have any questions?
How did they get the iron?
We took them to a veterinarian who specializes in birds and surgery on bird eyes. So we had to go the whole way to Cleveland to find somebody to do it. So, but it was done, and it was now he's a pretty healthy bird, and he can fly. He can actually fly very well. Okay. Again, we're back in the corner. We'd love to have you stop by if you haven't already stopped by. And you can find us on Facebook. Thank you for coming. Okay. Yeah, you're a good bird.